SCAF is the acronym for the Sherman Contemporary Art Foundation. It's a not-for-profit organization that exhibits and educates the public and art-interested people about contemporary art from the Asia-Pacific region, the Middle East, sometimes called West Asia, and Australia. It's going into its 7th year, so it opened in 2008, and it started as a result, I suppose it was born as a result of 21 years of my running Sherman Galleries as quite a large commercial gallery focused on the same region. That's Australia, Asia Pacific, and the Middle East. Collection Plus, when I began this research and covered as many places in the world as I could get to, I found that most of the spaces that I looked at that corresponded to this description were organized around the collections of the individuals concerned. So if, for example, a major collector had built up a significant collection, and that collection had far gone beyond the walls of his or her home or homes, that collection then went into specially constructed storage with the right level of air conditioning and all the accoutrements that need to go with cultural material. But that these collectors often became frustrated because when the time came for them to think of downsizing, museums were very loath to take on these huge collections, and if they did, they largely found a place in the basements. So many of these collectors built these privately funded, publicly accessible contemporary art spaces in order to showcase their collections. I didn't want to do that. I'm not quite sure why the idea didn't appeal to me, but it strongly didn't. I felt it was not interesting enough for me. It wasn't new enough. It didn't provide me with enough challenges, and I wasn't adding to the art world, but rather showcasing something that had already been gathered together by us over a long period of time, or, you know, by the said collectors. And I had this idea of dipping into our collection because so many people asked what we'd been collecting and why and where it was over the years. They'd always asked, but I'd always sort of, in a way, held them at bay. But when the requests and the queries became more insistent, I looked for a way to incorporate our collection into the mix of commissioned projects, which is what SCAF is largely about, newly commissioned projects, but not go the route that I had refused earlier, and that is simply using the foundation to showcase our collection on an ongoing and sequential basis. So I came up with the idea of appointing an external curator, but instead of asking the external curator to curate an entire show based on our collection, I asked the external curator to select one or at the most 2 works from our collection, and then to add works by the same artist from other collections. And Collection Plus Sopheap Pich is the second iteration of this now ongoing series. It's been a delight really for me, this series. I'm sorry I didn't start it a bit earlier now that I look back. This is a kind of, it's a rethink of what has been done by so many other private foundations. And what it does is it allows the artist and the collector, or collectors, because they're always collectors, to stand shoulder to shoulder and say, as a group of collectors, we focused on this artist, and they can be collectors from any part of the world. They can be collectors from private collections or public museums. They can be the artist, him or herself even. But gathered together, these collectors stand shoulder to shoulder with the artist as the generators of the exhibition. The first question that comes up in every talk, every time, is how do you select the artist? And the short answer is this. Well, perhaps it's not as short as the listeners or viewers would like, but this is what it is. Because it has always been a gallery that I have, together with my husband and my family, funded and directed, the work has to fit within my aesthetic sensibility, and my conceptual kind of relationship with the work has to be strong, and I also feel that I need to be emotionally pulled by the work in some way. So there's always an aesthetic, a conceptual, and an emotional layer to my choice. I saw Sopheap Pich's work in 2006 at the Asia-Pacific Triennial. For those who don't know, this triennial has been the most significant, I think, a series of exhibitions in Australia, probably ever, contemporary exhibitions, because it's been it started with such a clear curatorial perspective in 1993, and it's been going, building strengths and having some ups and downs as well ever since. And so I've gone since the 1993 iteration every 3 years, and Sopheap Pich's work, which I must say was less evolved in that show than it is in our show, I think, attracted my attention, and I did what I usually do. I followed it, I sought out other people, I tracked the work, I tried to find out where he was and a little bit about him. I decided myself, together with Brian, my husband, who always helps make the choices, to buy 2 works ultimately, and then Michael Desmond, then senior curator and finally deputy director at the National Portrait Gallery in Canberra, selected Sopheap Pich as collection plus number 2, iteration number 2. And then Michael had to pull back because of personal commitments, and so the creative research work was done by a curatorium. Erin Gleeson, who lives in Phnom Penh in Cambodia, who runs an artist's sort of collective and exhibition space there called Sasa Basak, Dola Merrilees, Associate Director at SCAF, and myself formed a little curatorium, and we hunted all over the world, finding pieces in Queensland at the Queensland Art Gallery, which they had acquired from that show or post that show, a private collection in Brisbane, a private collection in London, private collections in Phnom Penh, one piece in a collection of somebody I had known 25 years ago and hadn't been in touch with for decades, and also private collections in Sydney, and of course including my own collection.